the wall, the meaning of the border in the new America. That's for starters. You know, while 2019 might not offer much true jubilation, together we can feel joy in our growing resistance.
Welcome to Your Own Health and Fitness. I'm Lena Berman. Jeff Fawcett and I come to you weekly with a critical, independent voice on the politics and practice of health and the environment. We're living in times that have some searching for more connection with the Earth's network of life. It seems clear that disruption of the planet's balance begins as a cascade of destructive events, interconnected and ultimately devastating. Understanding our individual lives through the lens of our larger community, functioning with this delicate balance, informs us that imbalance can be fatal. We're lucky to have gifts from plants that communicate clearly to those who listen. Often overlooked among the massive array of homeopathic remedies and herbal products are flower essences, developed by physician and homeopath Edward Bach in the 1930s, almost 90 years after the death of the father of homeopathy, physician Samuel Hahnemann. Today's guest writes, quote, "Both Hahnemann and Bach came to the conclusion that the great flaw in allopathic treatment comes from the belief that the doctor is able to treat the patient's disease without treating the patient himself," close quote. We've been reviewing our archives for classic interviews, both timeless and timely. This hour, we listened to a 2008 interview with homeopathic educator Vinton McCabe, whose book, The Healing Bouquet, had just been released. This book covers all that's known about the history and the use of these gentle and remarkable remedies, including how to use them starting from emotions, our first responders, to guide treatment that addresses all aspects of imbalance and disease development. We found it invaluable to read through this book as we rediscovered these uniquely helpful flower essences, including the section called Using the Bach Flower Remedies. Since our brains lag behind our immediate physical response to dangers and challenges, following our emotions as a guide enables us to peel back distress and symptoms a layer at a time. Done slowly with observation, doors that seem closed open and true recovery is at hand. Here's the interview with Dr. Vinton McCabe. Health is not about disease, it's about each individual's ability to find their way through the challenges and lessons in being alive. If someone reports that they can cure you, they may be mistaken, since it's only you that has the ability to get to and unwind the complexities of your own existence. After all, there are worse things than death, as conventional medicine so often demonstrates. So if no one else holds the key, how can you be supported in healing when you're suffering? Many very smart people have walked this path, and there are a variety of lessons in their methods. Taking the lessons learned by studying homeopathy in the early 20th century, physician Edward Bach developed new methods of treatment that further supported the emotional aspects of disease development and unwinding he found in homeopathy. Bach believed that by balancing and mobilizing the vital force suppressed by traumas through a lifetime, health and joy are restored. His flower remedies are the result of his lifetime of exploration of these beliefs. Often passed over by homeopaths, Bach's flower essences work more gently than homeopathic remedies and are far easier for people to master on their own healing path. This is very much in keeping with the mission of this show. Today we explore Bach's remedies with homeopath and journalist Vinton McCabe, Vinton McCabe, M-C-C-A-B-E. Vinton McCabe is both an author and an educator. In his more than 15 years as president of the Connecticut Homeopathic Association, he has taught the philosophy and practice of homeopathic medicine to thousands of lay people and medical professionals alike. He's also developed educational materials into a number of published books, including The Healing Enigma, Household Homeopathy, and The Healing Bouquet, Exploring Bach Flower Remedies. I'm really happy to have you on board. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, but after hearing you do that introduction, you don't need me. You have this down.
Yeah, well, I was reading you all day yesterday, and I was also reading a little bit from your unpublished book, the Heretic's Guide to Healing.
Heretic's Handbook on Healing.
Handbook on Healing. So it was very much you igniting something that exists in me already. Just the synergy of our meeting. Let's bring other people up to date on this private conversation that we're having here.
Let's ignore them.
Oh, that would be fun. Bach was one of the foremost bacteriologists, that's hard to say, bacteriologists of his day. Right?
He was.
But he rejected what he called the material basis of illness.
Yeah.
And to quote him, he said, quote, disease in its origin is not material, close quote. So how does a bacteriologist get to this point? I mean, is he actually saying that bacteria do not cause disease?
He's saying whether they do or not, it's irrelevant. That it comes down to, is the individual a fertile ground for that disease, or is he or she not? And that if you are in a state of health, you simply will be unaffected. So he's saying, let's get our minds off of the flesh, because the flesh is always going to follow the mind and the spirit. So if you put your emphasis on healing as opposed to curing, if you stoke the fire within, then it doesn't matter whether you come in contact with a virus or a bacterium. You simply won't react to it.
Okay, short of this perfection of healing that we're all sort of aiming for with remedies that stimulate the vital source, until we get to that pinnacle of healing,
till the
some of us,
bounce off,
till we become Teflon, some of us may contract a little bacteria once in a while and get viciously sick, and I tend not to like the theory of some people who are writing that are sort of new agey about woundology, or the idea that people cause their own illness, that they have. No. So it's not about that, but in fact, one of the things that's interesting about Bach flower remedies, when you compare them to homeopathy, which Bach flower essence practitioners probably don't like to do. They like to think of it as being a pure thing of its own, and then, of course, homeopaths sneer at the flower essences. So all that aside, if you are ill enough to require using something like an antibiotic, which in a way would certainly with homeopathy interfere with the action of the homeopathic remedies, if I understand them correctly, is that also true of the Bach flower remedies? No,
actually it's not. We have to keep in mind, let's do a little history here. Edward Bach began his life as an allopathic physician, and he became a bacteriologist, as you noted. And during the time period of World War II and just after, he was one of the premier physicians in his particular part of medical science. He happened to take a job at the Hahnemann Hospital in London, named for Samuel Hahnemann, the father of homeopathy. And because of that job, he became familiar with Hahnemann's theories of health and healing, of medicine and treatment. And while I don't think Edward Bach would have ever called himself a homeopath, he absorbed a great deal of that philosophy, and it informed his practice.
Well, in fact, he was the developer of the bowel nosodes,
which were based specifically on allopathic medicines that he had already created. Yes, he jumped a barrier and gave the world of homeopathic medicine 6 of its most powerful remedies. And he established a practice in Harley Street in London that was one of the most thriving medical practices of its day. But something inside of him fundamentally changed to the point that he gave his practice to the others who were part of it. He gave his research to those who had helped him create those bowel nosodes, and he walked away from it all. Why? Because he just had a fundamental shift, a road to Damascus experience that you can work toward curing or you can work toward healing. And he had decided he no longer was interested in the cure. He instead was interested in healing. Now, this informs what you do and how you do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with using homeopathic remedies. As a matter of fact, I think they're terrific. I also don't think there's anything wrong with heroic intervention using allopathic techniques when it's necessary. Allopathic medicine is really good in the emergency. And we can't lose that, because I don't believe in having martyrs among us. I don't want anyone to die unnecessarily.
Well, and I think the other thing is that one of the things that's lovely about reading, especially the way that I have to say this to just start out with, this is a remarkably good book.
Okay.
I am now going to read every book that you've written, because I think you are one of the most premier authors on this whole body of information. You have a way of organizing information and unpacking it and going into appropriate amounts of detail. In other words, by that I mean that it's not the kind of detail where people start to roll their eyes and say too much information. It's the kind of detail that draws you into the topic. So your descriptions of the remedies and the different aspects and subtle sorts of things that people need to think about when viewing them, and also even comparing them to homeopathic remedies, is really quite brilliant. The thing that I try to avoid with people is that the lovely thing about Bach's writing, and you do quote him all over the place, so we get to read him in his own words, is that he's talking about this from a very loving aspect of releasing the body's capacity for joy and rebalance. And he talks about the way in which people's exposures to trauma during life, whether they're acute traumas or chronic traumas from childhood, sort of form us into some kind of creature that can't live fully, and that the flower essences help to release us from those patterns. So I would think that until you are somewhat released, or even on your path, as you age or you're exposed to things, honest to God things will come forward, and you will get, like I said, a bacterial infection or something, you have an accident or something. And so it's nice to hear that the flower essence remedies can be used in conjunction with allopathic medicine. I think that you might want to talk a little bit about, let me just quickly let people know you're listening to Your Own Health and Fitness. This is a show called The Essence of Healing, Bach's Flower Remedies, and we're on the phone with Vinton, Vinton McCabe, McCabe. His book is The Healing Bouquet, Exploring Bach Flower Remedies. Talk a little bit about the difference between healing and curing for people who have not already thought that through.
Okay. Let me just back up 1 second and say you brought up a point there that I think is so important. The Bach flower remedies are truly about no shame. There is no shame in having patterns in our life that are less healthy than they might be. And there's no shame in needing tools to get to a healthier, better place. So definitely shame comes off the table. And the other thing about the Bach remedies is that they really have no rules.
Oh.
Bach created 38 remedies, and he said, the truth of it is we all need all of them, because we all carry these little weights, like the ghost of Marley. We're all kind of held down by weights and chains. And these remedies will speak to all those aspects of negativity in our lives. So at one point or another, you're going to need all of them. So you really can't make a mistake. You can't do anyone any harm with them. You can't overdose on them. So having taught homeopathy for so many years to so many people, particularly the medical professionals who just, they're so concerned with amounts and timing and dosage and all that, that it's very hard for them to deal with the fact that with the Bach flower remedies, you really say, calm down, If people who take homeopathic remedies know their tongue has to be clean, and it should be 15 minutes before or an hour after you eat.
Well, you're also not supposed to mix them, and right. I know this is absolutely
it's
trafe, but
it's polypharmacy. We don't discuss it. We can only avert our eyes.
Well, okay. Well, while you're averting your eyes, I have actually found that sometimes I will just, I'll start with something and I'll wait, 15 minutes, an hour, or so, and then I'll pop another one. And if I know that I'm in real trouble, I might take 3. I know this is just so I'm going to be arrested when I get off the air, but
I will have to report you.
Thank you. Yeah, to the homeopathic police. But yeah, I've always found eclectic homeopathy. Well, it depends. With my cats, I've seen somewhat classical, loose classical work quite well.
I believe one should try to be classical, but again, we're not after martyrdom here.
Yeah.
If your symptoms flare while you're eating, take the remedy with the food.
Yes.
It will work.
Yes,
I promise you. I've
does.
seen it for 25 years.
Yeah, I know it does. It's also very funny when you find out how these remedies are made, that they're made with regular tap water and things like that, with all of their don't touch this, don't do that.
The reason not to touch, we're getting way off topic.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The reason not to touch, and this is important with the homeopathic remedy, is not that you're going to taint the remedy and it's going to die and, gasp and fall over, but because you're going to dose yourself on the way to dosing the other person.
Ah.
If you're taking that remedy yourself, you can pop it in your hand and then pop it in your mouth.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, healing, curing, very important. Very important because we've lost this in our society. Healing is innate. It's built within us. It's the magic of our own lives, what Hahnemann called the vital force. We have the ability to replicate ourselves, to heal ourselves, to move ourselves forward throughout our entire lives until we die. The strength of the vital force, the flow of energy, what in Chinese medicine they call qi, determines basically your state of health. Where there is blockage, there will be pain. Now, curing is something totally different. Curing comes from the outside in. Curing works from the mindset that if there is something heroic that we can do, if there's a leaf we can place on the wound, if there's a pill we can give, if there's a laser we can aim at it, then we can make it better. So it has this built-in idea of make it better. Healing doesn't carry that idea. Healing carries the idea of being more true to self, more sensible and holistic in self, sensible in the true meaning of the word, expressing, giving and taking, being in the moment. These are the ideas of healing. So at its best, medicine should work both to heal and to cure. But medicine, both allopathic and homeopathic, sometimes cures but does not heal. It eliminates the symptoms by suppressing them, by cutting them away, by any number of techniques. But it doesn't heal the issue. It doesn't heal the wellspring of the illness. It can also, you can many times see someone who's healed but not cured. They've made an adjustment, had their own road to Damascus experience that changed their life tremendously, and yet they still have the burden of the illness. But at its best, you see the patient both healed and cured. The symptoms, the pain is gone, and the understanding has been received. Message received, you can let it go, and that's the whole point of homeopathy, is the letting go, the not holding on to, the not retaining, the not suppressing. And Bach carried that very much forward from the homeopathic medicine of Samuel Hahnemann into the Bach flower remedies. They're all about letting go because healing demands that we let go. We let go of the things that hold us back, that hold us in check, that we have suppressed deep inside.
Yeah, I wrote down in my notes restoration of the spirit because that's what I got from reading Bach's words.
Absolutely.
So as you just said, the resolution of suffering may not be the same as curing, and
right.
You've explained that really well. So just to kind of go backwards a bit, what we're talking about is the use of titrated flower, literally flower and herbal essences that are more dilute than an herbal remedy.
Right.
But not quite as dilute as a homeopathic remedy. Although I understand that you can take your mother tinctures, your bottles that you buy, and you can dilute them out. Do you change the potency when you do that?
Yes, you do. You do. And as a matter of fact, there are companies now that have taken those mother tinctures and made them into 30C, Bach flower remedies that flies totally in the face of what Bach wanted. He knew homeopathy. You know, he knew it better than a lot of the people who were doing these things. And had he wanted to potentize his remedies, he would have. What he created was something absolutely unique that I say is a perfect balance between herbal and homeopathic medicine. It's neither one nor the other. It exists in a place of its own, a little off and to the left. And therefore, it works differently. So I feel I can be, yes, as classical as I try to be as a homeopath, and yet when it comes to the Bach flower remedies, I understand that because they work differently, we can use them differently, and we can combine them safely, and we can use them repeatedly, and you can use them topically or on the tongue or however you want to do it. You can be very free with these remedies. That was the whole point. Bach felt that if there was one weakness in homeopathy, it was that it was just too complicated. Mm-hmm. People couldn't wrap their minds around how to do it. There were too many remedies, and he wanted to find something simple. The whole point of the Bach flower remedies is he wanted to give people a means of self-treatment. This is for every man. This is not something for the medical professionals. And Bach himself would have been horrified of the idea of having professional Bach consultants and things like that. That flies in the face of why they were created. They were created for people to be able to treat themselves and those they love, and those animals they love, and have a means that's simple and very, very effective at the same time.
I had a remarkable experience with a cat who was quite ill, relapsed from a virus that was brought in by a rescue kitten. And I have a neighbor who has studied the flower essences, and so I trusted her because she's very sensitive to do a bottle combination for me because I don't have all the essences. I have quite a few. And she brought the bottle over, and she stuck the bottle under Oscar's nose, and he was interested in it. He was very interested in it, and we dribbled some of it on his fur and started to pet him, and he purred very loudly, and it was one of the first times he purred, and he did improve after the application. So I used them for a while. So I think sometimes it's even more dramatic to use these different remedies, and it's true of homeopathy to some degree too, because these are not, you don't have to worry about a placebo effect in an animal. You're seeing a real effect, so
right.
you get to see it. That said, little is written about Bach. So what do we know about the success of his methods?
We know very little about Bach in general, and it's always been one of the mysteries, what is the story here? We know that when he left London, he was a wealthy man, and he moved to a small British seacoast town, and he spent the last 7 years of his life, in essence, giving it away. As he explored the countryside, and I love this, he went back in medical history to the man called Paracelsus, and back before Paracelsus to Dioscorides, two giants in medicine, both of whom went on walkabout. They went and they learned from the herbalists, the witch doctors, the barbers, from the farmers who had to treat their animals on their own, and he found out what plant is this, what does that. And just as Dioscorides and Paracelsus had done, Bach did. He walked the British countryside because he was looking for the things that had been overlooked, that had been stepped on, that had been ignored in terms of what can we use, what vital force can we use to harmonize our own. And he found these 38 remedies based on very, very simple plants like rock rose and mimulus and impatiens, things that you might have growing in your own garden and you might sometimes think of as weeds. And he worked with them homeopathically, which is to say, he diluted them, and he tested them to see what would do what. And he would carry in his pockets vials of the medicines as he worked with them, and he would give them to people. He would see someone in a state of fear and give them mimulus and walk on. And Rescue Remedy, which is probably what most people know best of the Bach flower remedies, was actually created when on a stormy night there was a pounding on his door, and he opened the door to his little cottage, and his neighbors had brought a sailor up whose ship had capsized in the storm, and the man had been in frigid water and was near dead from drowning. And they said, can you do anything? Thinking, okay, he has doctor in front of his name. He might know what to do. And Bach ran and mixed together 5 of his remedies. He took impatience, which is for pain, for shock that makes anger rise. He took Star of Bethlehem, which is the general healing remedy, good for all cases of shock. Rock rose for trauma and panic. Cherry plum, which is for hysteria, and clematis, which is for anything that causes you to feel like you're going to faint. He mixed them together and put them on the man's tongue, and as you were saying about the cat, they instantly saw a response. His body instantly relaxed, and instead of being near death, he went into a gentle sleep and ultimately survived. So what does this point out? First and foremost, that we do have to keep into account at all times that when we're talking about healing, we are talking about physical as well as mental and emotional and spiritual. The Bach remedies, because they are given in the plane of the emotions, often are thought that they have nothing to do with the physical body, and that's not true, as your cat will attest. Second, that if we can come into tune with the emotional state of a person, it becomes irrelevant what's going on physically. That's what Bach kept saying. What's going on with them mentally, spiritually? Zero in on that. Don't get caught up in the myriad symptoms that they're presenting. Often in terms of treatment, we get lost in the forest because of the trees. And Bach said, keep it simple. Go back to who they are. If you're dealing with a person who's unconscious, you know, clematis, right there. You don't have to ask any other questions. In that way, it is completely unique. Even Hahnemann, in his homeopathic medicine, would say, Bach, you've gone too far. But Bach's system is his own, and it is absolutely effective. I've seen it work, and not only can I recommend it, but I can recommend it to anyone as a perfect doorway into herbal medicine or into homeopathic medicine, because it's simple.
Yeah, it's at least several light years away from what's happening in conventional medicine right now. We need to take a very brief minute or so musical break. We're going to be back in just a moment. This is Your Own Health and Fitness. I'm Lena Berman with Jeff Fawcett on the phone with Vinton, Vinton McCabe, McCabe. The book we're discussing is The Healing Bouquet, Exploring Bach Flower Remedies. Please stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Visit our website, yourownhealthandfitness.org, for information about this show and almost 700 other shows, free access to recordings as downloads, all of them, a free newsletter about upcoming shows, and more. Yourownhealthandfitness.org. Okay, so we're talking about these lovely, delicate remedies that we know now in modern times, and probably from some of the writing of Edward Bach that they work. Homeopathy, of course, was there during epidemics and stuff. So we've seen dramatic results with homeopathy during horrible pandemics in the past.
Yes, during the Great Flu epidemic, it was incredibly helpful. I mean, the survival rate of those who were treated homeopathically was something like 96%, while others were dying all around them. And of course, it goes all the way back to Paracelsus, who back in the Sturzing experiment in 1512 or something like that, proved an incredible success rate with the Black Plague of all things, when all the other villages were dying, he used homeopathic techniques to save his own. So, yeah, along with animal treatment, the use during epidemics is one of the strongest sources of information that advocates the use of homeopathic medicine.
These remedies sort of reveal different layers of feelings that can cause behavioral adjustments that impact on health. And one of the ways that this happens is that we develop sometimes not very effective ways of self-care that backfire on us. One of the things that's kind of, in other words, people try to take care of themselves. They do things that abuse their bodies without meaning to. Yeah. One of the things that's nice about the Bach remedies as opposed to homeopathy is there's less chance of getting an aggravation. And in fact, you recommend not pushing for an aggravation, particularly when you're dealing with somebody who's delicate.
I think that aggravations in general are absolutely sloppy homeopathy. They're not meant to be. Hahnemann says in the Organon of Medicine that if there is going to be an aggravation, it should be at the end of treatment, not at the beginning. So if you're getting an aggravation in anything other than the most chaotic acute situation, it's a sign that you've simply gone in with too much medicine. Either you're giving it too often or the potency is too high. Hahnemann says, and this goes for Bach remedies as well, that we're entitled to a treatment that is rapid, gentle, and permanent. And all three of those things need to be in place for it to be a proper homeopathic treatment. It's certainly easy enough to do any two of the three. You could be rapid and gentle but not permanent. You could be rapid and permanent but not gentle, and go from there. But you're seeking to do all three at once. And that's an important thing that we throw out the window all too many times when it comes to actual in-the-world practice of homeopathy. We keep getting off topic.
No, we're on topic, believe me. These remedies, these essences are fairly complex, and as I've said, you do a better job than anybody that I've seen write about them and make it easier to sort of explore this. One of the things you of course say in the book is that you will find yourself in most of these remedies. I found myself in about half of them, but that you work. In other words, I'm assuming that in the same way that you do with homeopathy, you look for the current, whatever you're experiencing right now, what are the loudest symptoms? And I find it really interesting that you start your description of these remedies by talking about fear and your discussion of the fact that fear seems to lie under almost all other emotional states.
That's been my experience over
Mine
the
too.
past quarter century.
Mm-hmm.
I think if there's one emotion that most of us can access the quickest and sustain the longest, it's fear. And especially in the world at this moment, we are all in a state to one degree or another of fear, and it's just how are you embodying it? I think if you're putting together a Bach mixture for everyone now, it needs at least one fear remedy.
And, of course, the fear remedies have different manifestations, including the idea that if you asked somebody if they were afraid, they would be absolutely certain that they weren't afraid, right, and that instead they were angry, for instance. I would like you for just a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about one of the remedies. I thought the one you started with, the Minulus, is interesting because of the subtlety of these. But you can talk about any one of the fear remedies for a moment, just to give people a flavor of what that would be like.
Well, let's talk about Mimulus, because I think that's the one that is actually most needed in adult Americans at this time. Because Mimulus is one of our Bach remedies that wears a mask. And in the case of Mimulus, the mask is, I'm not afraid. So the Mimulus type has very specific fears, and they know what those fears are. The Mimulus will be afraid to get in an elevator, will be afraid of heights, will be afraid of poverty, will be afraid of physical abuse, will be afraid of something that is very specific.
And real.
And real. As Deepak Chopra says, and I think it's the best thing the man ever said, the thing that you fear the greatest is the thing that's already happened to you. If you've been poor, you know why you should be afraid of being poor. So fear that is the Mimulus type fear is fear that has already been experienced. It's real world, oh my God, never let that happen to me again, fear. And because it can't be dealt with, a mask gets put on of, I'm not afraid of that. And you'll often find that Mimulus types will force themselves to do the thing they're afraid of doing in order to have a belief that they have it under control. And that control issue plays in deeply to the fear issue for the mimulus type. So that you'll see them walking a line of stress every day as they force themselves to go about the pattern of behavior that causes them the fear. They're the only one of the fear remedies that will do that. All the other fear remedies will retreat from the thing that makes them afraid. But the mimulus faces his fear and feels all the stronger for it, even though by doing that, they can be undermining their total health and well-being.
Absolutely. That's what I see is is these extremely hyper-aroused people who
It's not a healthy response. This is a highly negative fear pattern.
Well, and you're mobilized.
They're doing quite well.
Well, you mobilize because you're afraid, because you have to take care of everything around you. You have to, it's very interesting. It's very justified. It has a very justified sort of thing. I just very briefly need to ID the show again. This is Your Own Health and Fitness. I'm Lena Berman. We're on the phone with Vinton, Vinton McCabe, McCabe. The book we're discussing is The Healing Bouquet, Exploring Bach Flower Remedies. So let's try discussing a different fear remedy which has an entirely different quality to it.
Okay.
Just so, because I'd like people to understand. I mean, I think that one of the beauties of studying these remedies, especially the way that you express them, is that you get to be honest with yourself about what's actually going on as you peel these layers back. I mean, it's in a way, it's such a relief to finally admit to yourself that you begin to, in other words, when you admit or begin to understand what's at the bottom of this as you peel away, because then you can begin to care for yourself in a more appropriate way instead of just contracting
or denying.
Yeah.
If you can just get past the shame bit and say, yeah, I do that, this will give you a way of coming out of that, and not by denying it, not by suppressing it, by facing it, accepting it, understanding the reason for it, and then saying goodbye to it.
Well, and indeed, it does, I can see easily how if you reduce the acute symptoms of whichever kind of fear that someone's experienced, whether denied or experienced, that you will have the person begin to slow down enough to be able to determine what sorts of self-care things they need to do for themselves, so that you begin to make healthy decisions about eating, exercising, what time you go to bed. You begin to have more access to how you actually feel. So when people say, listen to your body, and your body's telling you to either over-exercise or eat, Mars bars or something, you can begin to get below that compulsivity to what's really going on.
And there are remedies both for the one who's over-exercising and the one who's eating the Mars bar.
Well, let's go for a couple. Let's give people some ideas of how these feel and work.
Well, let me talk about the remedy that I think, more than any other remedy, is needed by us as a society right now. Can we do that?
Oh, I would love that.
This is my favorite remedy for America in the year 2008. And we can even talk politics if you like. I can tell you what type every single one of the candidates is. And that can help. See, understanding the remedy, you understand people. You understand their power, their patterns, how they think. So you can make a really good decision about how someone's going to act under stress if you know what type they are.
Well, let's start with the best remedy for us now.
Okay, that's hornbeam. Now, hornbeam is a remedy for what I call information sickness. It is when you just have had too much input on too steady a basis, and you reach the point where you just want to sit down on a park bench and stare into space.
So overwhelm.
You can't handle anymore.
It's
not another thing.
Overwhelm.
Overwhelmed, joyless, drudgery. It is the remedy for people who feel that the joy has been drained out of their life, who wake up and say, is it Monday again? Who feel that their work is unsatisfying, their relationships are non-creative, their life is non-productive, and we're only going down from here. Now, I wonder if there's anyone listening who can resonate with this.
Please don't call in. So is hornbeam?
Go by hornbeam.
Is it one of the fear ones? It's not a fear one, is it?
Oh, I have to look and see. I'm not.
I'm
sure
looking.
Where it goes.
I'm looking. I'll look.
Okay, everybody look for hornbeam.
No, it's not a fear. I'll look for it.
No, it's not fear. It's.
I'll find it. Go ahead. Keep talking.
Okay. So, there's a science fiction book called Easy Travel for Other Planets where I got the term information sickness that literally is about a society, and this was written about 20 years ago, where people reached the point where they had to sit on a bench and a little white van came and got them and took them somewhere where they could rest. And that's what Hornbeam does. It allows you to find that spark back inside of yourself that had some creativity and had some joy and had some belief. Now, I think it's a doubt remedy is where I would put it, because it combines beautifully with gorse, which is the remedy for hopelessness. And gorse is another so important remedy for our culture because we have, doubt, gorse.
Doubt is, these are doubt. It's Hornbeam, gorse.
Doubt to me is pure cancer. Pure cancer. Gorse has reached the point where they just don't think it's possible that anything's going to get better. So our society now is like right at the crossroads between Hornbeam, where we're just overwhelmed, and gorse, where we've given up. And, if there are two remedies that you need every minute of the day, those are the ones. If you have chronic illnesses, someone who has like chronic pain and nothing's working, gorse can give them the wherewithal to get better. You'll also see this with animals, and I have a lot of information in the book about animals because it's so hard to treat them. But the Bach remedies, as you noted with the cat, are tremendously helpful for treating animals. And gorse is a good one. It's an important one. It's an important end of life, last stage of life remedy. It's an important chronic condition remedy.
You also mentioned that Mimulus is also very good for elderly patients who are beginning to face the end of life, for them to let go and be more comfortable.
Yeah. I tried in the book to give stages of life for all the remedies. Some of them, like aspen, are very much childhood remedies. Aspen's very sensitive, very high-strung, very afraid, but it's sort of an anxiety, a free-form fear, as opposed to Mimulus' very specific fear. And as we get older, we tend to move away from just being afraid of the dark and moving toward specific fear that's the Mimulus fear. So, yes, I tried in the book to do that. Now, you've been so kind about the book, and I'm so glad because I'm going to make my publisher listen to this, because I was originally given the task to write a little 100-page book that gave you little thumbnails.
No.
And I ended up writing a 500.
No, there's too many of those.
Stop.
There's too many books like that.
Yeah.
The other thing is that there are longer books, but I'm trying to think of a way to say this. The easiest way to say it is that they're all suffering from a little too much inner peace for me. They're just a little too, I don't know. Anyway, I can't resonate. I can't resonate with what they're saying, even though they're talking about emotions. You talk about them in a way that gives me room to be who I am. So the second place you go in the book after fear is to degrees of despair. And this is one of those moments where you're looking at these remedies and you go, wow, how can I be a Mimulus, and I'm also a this, and I'm a that, and I'm a this, and I'm a that. So when you find, you say, well, yeah, I'm afraid, but I'm also in despair, and I'm also, what else? Doubt. I doubt. And then, oh gosh, I put people before me, and, I need to control, and gosh, where aren't I in here? I mean, I said about half. I mean, there's certainly some I read and I go, nah, it's not me. So when you're choosing, because you mentioned that it's wise to try to start with one remedy, that you can mix them, but you can get crazy. Where you go, oh, this one and that one, right. And you start doing it like Western medicine or something. So in choosing a beginning one as a constitutional, do you go by what I said? You go by whatever is the loudest one for that particular moment and just follow yourself in? That's
sort of the acute way in, and that's fine. That'll work.
Well, what's the constitutional way in?
The constitutional way is there are two master remedies. One is wild oat, which is for the yin type, the non-active person, the person who receives energy rather than gives it.
Not my problem.
And then the other is holly. And that's for the yang type, the one who pushes out into the world and doesn't receive.
No, I'm not neither of those.
Well,
I'm kidding.
Then you're perfectly balanced.
No, I'm not. I'm so Holly. I'm so Holly.
At least you admit it.
Oh God, yes.
I didn't want to say.
No, it's obvious, isn't it? Obvious. It's so obvious.
Well, I am too.
Yeah.
But this is just the most basic. Now, these
are constitutionals.
Master remedies.
Okay.
So they're not the remedy, they're the door.
Okay, so
you
master.
start with just that one that reflects the yin or the yang, and you let it go from there and unfold. You take the one, maybe only once. You sit with it. You experience it. You let it go. And then the reason why I put them in Bach's group of moods rather than just alphabetical like most books is I thought this is a good entry point. If you know that the issue here is fear, then let's look at the 5 fear remedies and let's compare and contrast them and see which one feels right. So that's why I did it this way. If you find yourself, as you did and as most people do, resonating with half or more of the remedies, that's not unusual. That's not uncommon.
Well,
you're human.
I think another way to know that I'm that type is that I immediately wanted to run around with a bottle of wild oat and force it on other people.
Yes,
you need to be active here. Take this now. I know better than you do what to do. No, so that's what I'm always sitting on is, oh, hey, I know what you need. And then I'm thinking, no, you can't do that to people. That's absolutely, totally, no, I don't. And people beg me, tell me. They come in sessions. Yes. Just tell me what to do.
You asked about my website. That's why I don't have one anymore. I got 2 questions. What remedy should I take, and can you recommend a doctor?
Well, and it's no sooner do you explain that what you're trying to do is empower them and teach them how to make their own decisions that they come back with, I mean, I'm sorry, people who do this, I understand that you're desperate and afraid, but, then they say, well, okay, so what should I do? And that's hard. So you take your constitutional.
Yes.
And let's say just as an example that you find your constitutional. Those are the 2 main constitutionals? Wild oat and holly?
They're the masters.
Those are the masters. Okay, so you find your master and you take it. But then you get something, like a rip-roaring bacterial infection, just as an example, for instance. Do you start by taking your master remedy and then say, okay, good, I've done that, and then go back and treat acutely for your whatever infection or whatever you've got?
Well, this is always an issue. Now, I tend to be incredibly conservative on this issue, and I want to say that right up front, because everybody really needs to decide this in the moment for themselves. For instance, this time of year, I tend to have hay fever. Now, I have put myself on a mixture of Bach remedies that are new remedies for me. One of them I've never taken at all before, and I'm having some very interesting results with them. But I'm also sneezing, and I'm not happy in the morning when I wake up and my head's all clogged up. But I've chosen not to treat the hay fever.
Oh.
Just have it, It's not going to kill me because I think I'm doing something much more important. So in terms of medicine in general, I think we've sort of gotten to the point that we tend to overtreat ourselves for everything. And I like to be very simple in terms of medicine. And if I'm in a process and what's happening in the moment is an acute or even a chronic, like an allergy, that's not an important chronic that I can deal with, I just let that happen.
Yeah, but what about an important acute situation?
If there's an important thing happening, if you feel you need to pay attention to it, then definitely pay attention to it.
No, but in the protocol, would you start with your master remedy and then
Not necessarily.
Oh, just go for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, don't get caught up in worrying about you're going to do something wrong. Every time you feel that, picture Bach over your shoulder saying you can't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. And that's the beauty of these remedies, because in a whole world where everyone's always telling us we've got it wrong, here's one man who's telling us we have it right and that we're in process to get better. And that's a tremendously powerful philosophy.
Well, he does, from your writings, appear to have been an extremely loving person, a very generous, loving person who died in poverty, as did Heinemann. Although Heinemann lived, as you point out, to be like 83 and for the time, since he was he was 50 years ahead of.
They had to beat him to death with a stick.
You're being, of course, metaphoric, I think. Yes. Okay. But now Bach died younger.
Very young.
Yeah. Was that just because he, had that type that takes care of everybody and doesn't take care of himself?
That's exactly what the situation
He forgot to treat that in himself?
He chose not to.
Uh-huh.
He chose his life, and he very much didn't eat. You know, he was one of those, would forget to eat.
Yeah, there's
which type?
Which type is that? Do you remember without looking?
I would not have,
because there is.
Hahnemann was so easy to place in his homeopathic remedies,
yeah.
And yet Bach is so hard to place because I know so little about him.
Yes.
The information that we have is basically out of Nora Week's biography of him. And it's so fawning. I mean, I understand he was a wonderful human.
Yes.
But this is not even a biography. It's so fawning. It's like an Us magazine article that was presented in length. And so we really don't have a handle on him.
Well, we have the self versus others. No, that's the word's the opposite. That's the narcissist.
Well, we got to look at some patterns. He has the Vervain thing going on. He's visionary. He's charismatic. He's showing you, lighting a light to a new path. I mean, he's the Obama of the medicine world, you know? It's that sort of a feeling. So that's where I would place him on first thought.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, who knows what else is going on? There could have been masks there that he's acting better than he is, which would be agrimony, that, you know, he's literally getting ready to die and he's saying, oh, I'm fine. Go worry about them. That's agrimony. So that could have been there. There's just no telling. I would have, you know, if you have the mythical dinner party where you get to ask any 5 people, dead or alive, to come, Bach has a chair there for me.
You bet.
I would love to talk to him.
Right next to Mark's.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
There's that Holly.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Oh, dear. And by God, everyone else will listen to him. No, I'm not really. Yes, I am. I always say, well, actually, what is that? Which one is that?
Scleranthus.
I'm writing that down.
Duality.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yes, I am.
Oh, no, very much so. No, the issue. Well, I've always said, and this must be revealing, that the sign of a truly really smart person is the ability to hold conflicting ideas in your head at the same time. Because when I look at the world, it is full of a duality, although you can get to a core place where there isn't any, but for the most part this is true, and then gosh, this is true over here, and they don't seem like they can be true at the same time, and that's probably pathology. I'm willing to accept that idea.
Well, what you've done is you have revealed your constitutionality.
Okay, tell me what it is, because I'm going to get off. What is this?
SCHLERANTHUS.
Wait,
SCHLERANTHUS. It's a doubt remedy. And it's one of our most underutilized Bach flower remedies.
It's probably the only one I don't have.
It usually is used, it's usually called indecisive. And they think, oh, if they can't decide between the chicken or the steak, give them scleranthus and they'll decide. But it's much more profound than that. This is the remedy of duality, of schism, of seeing both points of view and not being able to detach enough to make a single decision.
So this is a constitutional, not a master.
Oh, it can be both, but it's deep constitutional. It's a tremendous remedy. It's a great remedy for people with a lot of physical complaints, too, like people with lazy eyes, where their eyes don't work together, the teaming isn't good. Scleranthus will help bring it together. Certainly schizophrenia, I'm not suggesting anything.
No, I understand.
Here, Lena,
I know. No, I'm not schizophrenic, and my eyes are not lazy. They're actually more like lasers from the description that people have of me. But you know, we're running out of time, even though I could just go on and on and on and on and talk about myself, and that should tell you something about me too. But we can talk later. We need to stop. I want to thank you so much for your time. Vinton McCabe, The Healing Bouquet, Exploring Bach Flower Remedies, Vinton McCabe, McCabe. Thank you again so much for your time.
It was a delight.
You've been listening to an interview with Vinton McCabe. I'm Jeffrey Fawcett, and in our review of this show, it really reintroduced to me a lot of considerations, the most important of which is how we are not used to this kind of thinking or this kind of approach to health, and that's really a critical part of this approach, that it's about health, not medicine or diagnoses. One of the things that struck me from the cover of the book and has to do with some of its marketing is it talks about emotional healing. And really it's about healing as such with the emotions as the entry point, the way of getting to what needs to support our health. Using Bach flower essences gives us an opportunity to develop our emotional literacy and our emotional consciousness, awareness, honesty in pursuing our health, not only to solve emotional problems, but as an entryway to overall health.
We've learned through other shows that we've done about stress and trauma that you have a physical reaction and your body registers fear or trauma or look out before your brain kind of gets a clue of what you're looking at. You know, if you see a snake, it's kind of your body that goes snake before your brain says snake.
Right.
So in the same way, when you're not feeling well, the first thing that will happen is that your emotions will shift. And one of the things that I found delightful about my reacquaintance with this book is that whether or not you consider yourself to be emotionally literate or not, what happens as you start working with the descriptions of these remedies, and it gives you different ways in, you get physical symptoms too, you begin to be more honest with yourself about what you're feeling. And you also can experiment with these remedies, and he suggests this, using one at a time in the beginning instead of mixing them as many companies do now.
Since most people's familiarity with Bach flower essences is rescue remedy, one of the really, for me, dramatic examples of the use of flower essences is the story he tells of the sailor who's drug in from a ship that's been wrecked. He's in very dire straits, and these folks bring this sailor to Bach. He's a doctor, he must know how to do something, and instead of doing heroic medicine, what he does is literally he grabs rescue remedy, gives it to him, not to calm him down, not to make him less nervous at a public speaking event, but to get his body in touch with itself so that it can help bring him through this. And the sailor rests, he sleeps, and he recovers in the morning. So this isn't just about emotional stability in contrast to chemical psychiatry, which is all about slamming things into the body. It's about the body healing itself both emotionally and physiologically.
And that's what's so amazing is that when you follow, if you are, as I said, emotionally honest enough to admit to certain feelings, and you realize that's where you are and you might not have expected it, and you start to uncover them, because if you take too many remedies when you first start this out, you can sort of confuse yourself, but you start with one remedy and you get an effect. That gives you a clue to what you were feeling, and this not only shifts, as you just said, it not only shifts your emotional state, but it shifts your emotional state first, and then you notice that some of your physical symptoms are going away, and you would never have thought that they were, that a remedy like that could do it. I just want to mention that there are other companies that make flower essences, and I don't want to make it sound like the only ones are Bach. There's Flower Essence Society, and there are many other companies that also make that have in our modern times have begun making remedies like the Bach remedies using his methods. So there are a whole vast array of different remedies out there.
And we'll have a list of various organizations on the website in association with this show, so you can find out more information about Bach flower essences. Thanks again for listening. We hope you join us again next week.
Thank you for joining us today. Visit our website, yourownhealthandfitness.org, for information about this show and almost 700 other shows, free access to recordings as downloads, all of them, a free newsletter about upcoming shows, and more. It's all at yourownhealthandfitness.org. Your Own Health and Fitness is produced by Lena Berman and Jeffrey Fawcett. Being informed not only protects your health and your environment, it protects your freedom.
Through these recent darkening decades, One of the most lucid public voices in the United States has been Robert B. Reich. Responding to our current divisions, cynicism, and hideous self-interest, he now offers us the common good, a manifesto urging reform of our economics and politics. This is a heartfelt statement from a major political thinker devoted to saving America's soul. Robert Reich will speak at First Congregational Church in Berkeley on Wednesday, February 6th at 7:30. This KPFA benefit does have wheelchair access, tickets at local bookshops, and brownpapertickets.com.
You're listening to 94.1 KPFA,